It's not, oh, there we go. Okay. Let me welcome you to tonight's program. I'm Tom Atchley, the Redlands Area Historical Society current president, and I'm going to introduce Ron Running, our vice president, who will introduce me because I'm doing the program. So that's kind of convenient, you know, you just go from one to the other. I'm looking in the audience and I see way in the back there, the city treasurer. I have no money and can do nothing. And then I see a past student of mine from Redlands High School, Mr. Verhoeven back there. My dentist has been speaking about you and about how you've given me credit for the Dutch history that you've been using at your church. Thank you very much. And I see Mr. Larson, a past teacher here in the front, near the front. I'm looking around and I see I see Jill back there, who's our previous hospitality person. We're looking for a new hospitality person. Jill's back there waving her hand at you. She's got the cowboy hat on. That's okay. We're in Redlands, so we can fit the Southwest. Okay. And then Erin Benson really is responsible for this program because thanks to her actually her ability with computers, she's the one that sets up both the Zoom audience so that they can see a program and hear me. And she sets up my computer so that this computer is launching both the in-person and as well as the Zoom at the same time. So without Erin, you wouldn't be at home in your underwear with no shoes on, looking at this program, wondering where I am. Well, it's not necessary to see me because the program is really about the slides I'm going to show. So without further ado, let's have Ron Running, who has the dubious responsibility of introducing me.
How many people don't know Tom? Yeah, that's what I thought. Tom is one of our founding fathers of the Historical Society way back. And he's a local Crafton boy, not a Redlands boy, but he did attend Redlands High School and University of Redlands and San Bernardino Valley College. Then he taught at what's that other one?
I taught at Cope first.
Yeah, first he was a junior high teacher at Cope, and then he transferred to Redlands High School for 35 years or 40 or something.
38 total.
Yeah, 38 years. So, but we've been really fortunate. We can always count on Tom for informative programs on Redlands history, and this one especially, we'll see a lot of places that we drive by, and then when we see what they used to be, it's totally different. So take it away, Tom.
So I've got to thank the Redlands Area Historical Society from 1900 that started collecting materials and sending them to AK Smiley Library. At the time, the library was 2 years old. And then we've had a series of directors that have really helped the accumulation grow. And then Eliza P. Robbins Crafts donated all her material that she had on all of the land purchases of her husband. And then Scipio Craig, who managed and started the Redlands Citrograph in 1887 until his death in 1908, he donated all the photographs he had, and he donated all the pamphlets that he had printed on Redlands. All the Chamber of Commerce material that he printed were usually done at the Citrograph print shop. And he also had quite a collection of the Redlands Daily Facts, which was his competition, which started in 1890. And so he turned that all over to the library, and they, of course, put it in a collection. And then we owe Phyllis Shea, who was the library director in 1972, she hired this unknown kind of a loudmouth kid from Colorado by the name of Larry Burgess. And Larry Burgess started the Heritage Room. At first, it was at the end of the reference wing, and it slowly but surely grew. And of course, this is the 50th anniversary of the Heritage Room. And if it wasn't for those people back in the early 1900s, and you today, hopefully you're giving photographs and other materials that you have to the library that are about Redlands history, because otherwise the program I'm showing you tonight would not be possible, okay? So not only collecting the material, but then archiving them. That is making sure they're in acid-free folders, making sure they're not under bright lights or things like that, which will deteriorate black and white photographs rather quickly. I've looked at my family's photograph of my 1968 graduation, and I faded a lot. My sister graduated in 67. I can say she's faded more than me, and she's in color. And we had a good photographer in Redlands that was down on State Street that took our photos. Color is worse than black and white, okay, as far as deteriorating. And if it's under a light, any kind of light, you are looking at damaging the photograph in very short order, okay? And then of course, the sunlight is hell on photographs as well. So I hope that you think about Redlands history a lot. And I hope that you consider, before you leave this world, to donate materials to the Heritage Room. They'll go under your name forever. It's better than a tombstone, because only myself and others walk the cemetery occasionally on tours, and then we don't know who you are, but at least the library will keep a record of that. So I wasn't really interested in Redlands homes when I first got married in 1972, but my wife was. She was from San Bernardino, and our first place we rented was on Brookside Avenue. And we had bicycles and we rode around all over Redlands, and she was fascinated with all the homes that were here because there was nothing like them in San Bernardino. She grew up on 49th Street, and there's nothing up there except 1950s homes. There aren't any of the early homes at all. And she took photography classes and started taking photos and asking me questions about the homes. And then I was, at the time in the 70s, I was indexing the Redlands Citrograph, and I came across like homes under constructions or home that were already built. But Scipio Craig was really good about giving when it was built and how much it cost and who the contractor was and everything else. And so when she would mention a house, let's say she saw on Highland Avenue or Cypress, I would go through my file index and say, hey, that house was built, and she was even more fascinated. Well, her fascination got me interested, okay? Because before that, I'm interested in Redlands history, but houses, who gives a crap about houses? I mean, everybody lives in one, it's no special deal, except as I was doing the classes on history of Redlands, or San Bernardino County and Redlands, the most, I would say the most popular program that I presented was on Redlands homes. And surprisingly, you know, as a history teacher, you're not used to the audience after you've given a lecture to clap, especially from high school students. That's just not going to happen. And so the clapping just took me back, like, what are they clapping about? And it was because they were fascinated by the history of the homes. This first one I'm going to show you, I owe it to Maria Reynolds for discovering the fact that this home has been modified and changed, and it looks completely different today. I knew about the early history. This is the Hosking home. John Hosking came to Redlands, actually came in 1882, but he sent Sarah Morey and James Bird of Riverside to act as his agent and come down and buy property from Judson and Brown on Brookside Avenue for 4 different families that were part of the Eureka Mills mine in Plumas County, Northern California. And John Hosking was a superintendent of the Eureka Mills mine. Now, of course, the motto of California is Eureka, I found it. As not named for Eureka, the city, nor is Eureka Street in Redlands named for Eureka, the city, or Eureka, the motto. It's named for the Eureka Mills mine, okay? And I don't know if they stole that from California motto or if it came later. But anyway, that mine was giving out by 1881. And so Hosking bought 20 acres for $1,500. And the going price was $100 an acre. So he actually got a deal. And he brought 3 other families with him. They all bought 20 acres, planted 5 acres of oranges and 15 acres of raisin grapes. There was money in raisins. And citrus, no one's going to risk citrus. No one knows if anybody's going to ever buy those things. And in 1882, how do you get them to market? There's no railroad here, okay? The closest railroad was in Colton. So you didn't put money into orange trees. Now, Sarah Morey, she bought 10 acres and spent $1,000 and planted her 10 acres to a nursery. She supplied all of Riverside with navel orange trees that were 1 year old, and they were all Washington navels. So she grafted them all so they would produce seedless oranges. And then she also got Frank Brown and Edward Judson to buy orange trees from her. And so the trees that Hosking and Inge and Truman all planted were all from Sarah Morey. So when people ask about who planted the first orange trees in Redlands, I'll tell you, Judson and Brown did, and they were planting them in 1879, and they planted them here and there and everywhere, including Redlands Heights, just to see how well they would do. So the first tree planted in what is now Redlands was on 124 East Palm, 1 tree. And Theodore Clark lived in the house later built on that property. The tree has since succumbed, but anyway, that's where the first orange tree is planted in Redlands. Now, that's the Redlands subdivision. Remember, this is a subdivision along Cajon Street for 500 acres, and it's not called Redlands until 1888. And at that time, it gobbles up all of Livonia as well, okay? So the earliest tree that was planted in the East San Bernardino Valley that became Redlands was 1874, and that was by Colonel William R. Tolles, who lived on the corner of Church and Pennsylvania Avenue, over where Clement is located today. And so that's early citrus really quickly for you. Anyway, John Hosking, look at his house. 1886, $6,800 to build. And of course, the carpenter doing the work is a guy by the name of David Morey. Later on, David would, build another house up on Terracina in 1890. But that house was financed with $10,000 that came from Sarah Morey's nursery, where she's selling the first citrus trees in Redlands for $1 a piece, okay? So if you look at this house, it's rather Gothic in style. And of course, in 1886, there's no lumber yard in Redlands, so everything has to be brought in from Colton or San Bernardino by wagon. So in 1881, there's only 12 houses built in Redlands, and all the wood came from either the San Jacinto had a lumber mill, and there were lumber mills in the San Bernardino Mountains. And once again, you had to go to San Bernardino to get the wood and then haul it out here. When Frank Morrison built his house on East Palm, he had the wood delivered to the Southern Pacific platform down on Winery Road, at the bottom of Winery Road in San Mateo Canyon. And then he loaded it on his wagon. Then guess what? He couldn't make it up the grade by the hospital. It's too steep. So he had to back up the horses, go all the way back down to the bottom, and then go all the way around and hit Barton Road and then come in that direction. And so because the hill was just way too steep. So anyway, I want you to look at this. Hosking property on Brookside Avenue was on the north side of the street, and his family, his children, he had 6 children. They sold the property in 1922, which became a subdivision about where the Seventh-day Adventist Church is today. And then the house was still standing, and 1927 moved across the street, and here it is today. Yes, here it is today. Now, this fascinating bit of history was found by Marie Reynolds. I can't claim doing this one. But anyway, when she showed me that, I thought, God, all the original Eureka Street, all the original Brookside people's homes are all gone. And then she showed me this. I go, oh my God, that can't be the same house. And it is, okay? There's even a story in the Redlands Daily Facts, 1927, that explains how it all happened. Now, since Hosking was from the Eureka Mills mine, and Frank Brown was surveying Redlands at the time, and he got to an unnamed street, Hosking said, let's call it Eureka Street since it's at the end of Brookside Avenue. And so that's how Eureka Street gets its name. Okay, so Sue, you've been telling all the wrong stories. She's on the Historical Society. It's not named for the city of Eureka. It's named for the Eureka Mills mine. Okay, now she's been fully corrected. Okay, so here's John Hosking on the left, and one of his neighbors, I think that's Thomas Inch on the right, out in front of the house. And of course, it's still got its weeds and all the other things. And as I said, very Gothic. Look at all the barge board, the tower on it. And of course, it's got on the corners, you can see what they call queuings. It's supposed to look like bricks or stone. It's a copy of what the Greeks did in Athens, and we did it in Redlands with wood. So now, switching from 1886, let's go to 1910. This is the Thomas Eaton home. Eaton came to Redlands in 1890 or 1882. He was a professor, a mathematics professor, and built a house on the corner of Roosevelt and East Cypress. Today, it used to be called Reservoir in East Cypress, but we renamed it Roosevelt. Okay, so it's no longer Reservoir. It's got the name Roosevelt attached to it because of Roosevelt's visit to Redlands. And that's for Teddy, of course. So there's his house, his second home in Redlands, built in 1910. It's unusual because that's, the period where we're doing craftsman type homes, but he was unusual in that he built out of stone, actually concrete bricks, which you see there. The second story, of course, is the shingle style, which is definitely a craftsman type style, and it's been modernized, okay? Some of you will like what was done, and some of you will grimace. Like I said, because, each generation, you have to understand, architectural styles change, okay? Except if you're building in Washington, D.C., everything has to be the Greek architecture to follow everything else that has already been built. But here in Redlands, we're building homes at the end of the Victorian period. So our number of homes that were built at the end of the Victorian period were built by older people who had always had their dream house and waited to build it when they moved to Redlands, and built with steep gables and all kinds of barge board and decorations, because that's what homes look like back east. And when they came here, they built the same type of home. Well, very quickly, you know how often you have to paint a Victorian home? About once every 5 years. And after you're working up there in the second story with the spindles, and there's 20 or 30 of them going across one area, you very quickly realize, I'm not going to do this ever again. And so when you get to the 30s, during the Great Depression, you're looking for a cheap way to maintain the home, and it's called white paint. And so all these homes got painted white, okay, from top to bottom. Well, when you're building a Victorian, you're basically saying, look at me, I've made it. And so you're actually sacrificing the interior practicality of the home for the sake of the exterior view. So 1920s again, this is the King Tut House. It's on 637 Buena Vista Street. King Tut's grave was discovered in Egypt in the 1920s, and his sarcophagus went on tour around the world. Everybody went King Tut crazy. And so Garrett Heising, who was contractor here in Redlands, built lots of homes. And so he built this for his daughter's wedding gift. And so it is a typical grave looking building. You've got, the sphinxes out front. You've got on the left side of the house, it has a pool for fish. That is reminiscent of the Nile River. And upstairs, you have a flat roof. If you look, there's a stairway going up the side here, going up. And there's a fireplace up here and a fireplace down here. And of course, there's a bird aviary back here, which is now a wet bar, thanks to my ever-present neighbor. My house isn't there yet because it's 1922, and my house is not built till 1928. My house is in an orange grove, okay? And like most of you, you're all living in what was previously orange groves, okay? So I know the city council was lecturing people that lived on off of Palm and Walnut and area, saying you're living in what used to be orange groves yourself, and you're not letting this developer build on the 8 acres to put in 28 homes. And but then again, there's one thing that I can say that happened that hasn't happened in the early history of Redlands, and that is when you bought a 10-acre orange grove and there was a Victorian house on it, the first thing that happened was the house was torn down. That didn't happen on the England property, okay? So the house still there, and even the carriage house is still there. And that's something to say for preservation that we haven't said in the past. So this is what the house looked like it was built. And here it is, about 5 years ago. My house is on the right. You can just barely see it, okay? And of course, Ray had to, the sphinxes were gone, so he had to have those rebuilt. So he had to build a complete model of them and then go down to somebody who is clever and have them construct the sphinxes. He's revitalized the pool on the left. He put in about $1,000 worth of koi, and the raccoons left the heads of the fish on the driveway and said, thank you. And then, because I worked in the San Bernardino Mountains for the Forest Service, I had some raccoon traps, and I made them residents of Mill Creek Canyon. They have never reported back to me on what happened. So this is also in Buena Vista, the 1920s, 1929. And I show you this house because young men coming back from World War I, having been in France fighting, they came back with ideas on what they wanted their homes to look like. So kind of a French style half timbering. And this is what it looked like when I'm sorry, that guy can't push the right buttons. Anyway, this is the Vinton Gregory home. He was involved in the citrus industry. And of course, if you look at before and after, you can see what the front of the house has changed a little bit. You can see what the awning does on the left side. And that, of course, makes a difference. I like the flower planter below the window. But the idea of the house was to have a dark colored roof, flat tile with a light colored plaster, and the half timbering So you would see the color would pop out to you from the street level. And of course, the 1929, we still don't live with our garage as part of our house. So it's a detached garage, which is behind the home, okay? So the other thing that's changed on the property is that the ribbon driveway was taken out and solid concrete was put in all the way back. So this is my house, built in 1928, French architecture once again. I like to look at the gnome houses that are on Normandy Court and say, we're of a kin. There's 1927, mine's much later, 1928. And of course, there's something in common between this house and my house. We're both built with the wood from the Mentone Hotel that was torn down in 1920. But the contractor that got all the salvage wood, it's in my house and my neighbor's house across the street. So I have square nails like every other Victorian house. The lower part of my house is all redwood, and the floor is all 1 inch thick walnut. Yes. And so when we rebuffed and redid our floors, the floor guys said, where'd you get this wood? I said, well, in 1892, when they built the Mentone Hotel, that's where it came from. So anyway, this picture was taken some time ago because my youngest is now 42. And you can see that they used on my roof party colored brick. So there's 4 different colors of flat tile. So it's not the barrel tile that you're used to seeing, it's flat tile. So this house is on the historic register. I'm not in a historic district, but I did register my house. And so my ribbon driveway, my tile on my roof, my awnings, the exterior jazz plaster, because it is the jazz age, are all on the register. And so the next person who buys my house, I have given the city basically a facade easement to say, thou must keep the exterior the same that Tom Atchley wanted it. Yes, thank you very much. I will live on forever. So here's my ribbon driveway. I had a 31 Ford Model A when I went to high school, and there it is in the driveway. And of course, French Normandy architecture. And I have a detached garage, which now has solar power. My bill this past month was $5.01. And it wouldn't have been $5.01, except they charged me for the fact that the electricity comes on wires and telephone poles and all that. And I can't get away for that for free. So they have to have a subsequent charge every year. I was told that eventually it's going to go up to $6 so that I'm paying my fair share. So you can get my electricity. Well, you're supposed to get it cheaper, but they charge you more for it than I produced it. Okay, so there we go. All right, so 104 Cajon. Charles Bailey was a city attorney for a while in 1902, and the Victorian period's over, so your tower is not tall. It's not 2 stories. Actually, this house is 2 stories. You just don't notice it. And when it was built, when the flora and fauna grows up to block your house, it's nice to see the original house without all the stuff growing in it. Notice the telephone pole there is square, not round, with ugly, creosote dripping from the outside of it and stuff. So they had to replace all those because subterranean termites eat away at them and then they come falling down. Anyway, the Bailey House has not changed remarkably and has been renovated several times and looks good today. This is on Cajon Street, the Auchincloss house. They were related to the Colgate-Palmolive family. So when you brush your teeth, you help the owners of this house. They stayed until 1913 when the great freeze took place. It was depressing to stay here. And then they left Redlands completely because it was depressing. They moved to Santa Barbara. That place will never never be anything, so don't worry about it. So anyway, the Auchincloss house, when it was first built, here it is. Beautiful house. And of course, the Edwards house has been moved. It was on Cajon Street where Plymouth Village is today, and moved in the 1970s. And because the developer that bought the house and cut it in half and moved it wanted to have a restaurant, he kept it low to the ground so there wouldn't be lots of steps to deal with for people who are handicapped. So it looks a little squatty when you see the original photographs, which I'm not showing you. You would see that it's much higher. When the restaurant was open, I would go in and they'd give you a menu, and they had on the front of the menu a picture of the home with the family, and it said Edwards family reunion. I think it was 1921 or 22. Actually, that is the boarding house people. And the Chinese cook is in the photograph and everything else. And when I told the owner he wasn't happy with me, and I kept my mouth shut thereafter. He since passed away, so I'm telling the truth now. So here it is moving down Cajon Street, which was quite a sight to see a house cut in half. And when it moved across the freeway, that was really a sight, moving across the freeway, two halves of a house going down. And it cost $500 for every line they had to cut that Edison had to put back up. Yes, and you know how many lines there are when you turn Cajon Street to Orange Street to Redlands Boulevard? Yeah, that's a lot of money. So he got the house for $1. It just cost a fortune to move it. So Cajon Street has been, well, I can say modified a lot. This house was about, let's see, just north of Palm Avenue, beyond Plymouth Village, and it was torn down in the 1920s. And now you're looking at the Beaver Clinic parking lot. Yes, and feel bad because here's another Beaver Clinic parking lot. And look at the palm trees planted in 1892. They're starting to get, 4 or 5 years old. And then look at this house. And when I say steep pitched roofs, you can see, well, if it snowed in Redlands, there'd be no problem here at all. And of course, the cresting is the crenellated cresting that you would see on castles. And it's all out of metal. And during World War I, people took it off their houses and it was melted down to shoot at the Germans during World War I. So, and you'll notice that the earlier houses, you'll see examples of fish scale shingles. When you see fish scale, you can usually think that the house is built sometime in the late 1880s and early 1890s. So once again, more Beaver Clinic parking lot. Yes. So when businesses or industry or churches get successful, they eat their neighborhoods. And so Beaver Clinic, Sacred Heart Church, Redlands Community Hospital goes from the community hospital down to the Maury House. And there were 4 or 5 Victorian homes before you got to the Maury House. Several of them have been saved and they moved up to other streets, but the hospital devoured lots of houses. In fact, they went across the street down Winery Road and tearing down another house there. So another parking lot picture. So before and after, I didn't have to take a picture of the parking lot. I know you've seen the parking lot several times. Once again, another house on Cajon Street, the Sherman House on Cajon, torn down. Remember, that's the first street of the Redlands subdivision in 1881. The first 500 acres were off Cajon Street, and the water line came right down Cajon, and it's high enough on a little ridge that you could send irrigation water to the east or to the west, gravity flow. So that's why Frank Brown chose it as his center street. Once again, Cajon. Okay, Cajon and Home Place, 1898. So once again, the Victorian period's over, but Here you have a witch's cap, and you have a dental course. I used to tell people on the walking tours, you see a dental course, it's between 1897 and 1903. And once again, once you get tired of scraping the paint off those 4 or 5 times, you take a hammer and you whack each one of those, and they come right off really easily. They're just little pieces of square wood. And as I said, you're stripping with a toothbrush, you get pretty tired of that. And remember, you're stripping and you're standing on the side of the roof there, because you can't be on a ladder, because I don't think it would hold too well. So Brookside Avenue, the Davis Donald home, 1891. And it's now of course, a dentist's office that's there today. We're on the corner of San Mateo and Brookside Avenue. So here's what it looked like it was built. And of course, it has that dome on the top. And of course, the decorations around the outside, because when Donald got married, it was his wife's wedding, or her birthday. So this is a wedding cake house. So you see the first layer of the wedding cake in the bottom layer. I was told by rumor that they actually had a candle on the top when they first went into it. I doubt that's true. It's like many Redlands stories that I've found to be fallacious. So anyway, when it was purchased by Russ and Jean Wilmot, Jean Wilmot is now Jean Stein. She lives in San Diego. And when Maria Reynolds did her program a month ago, we got a nice letter from her saying that she still loved that house. She's rejoined the Historical Society, and hopefully she's watching right now, because I tell you what, Russ and Jean were slaves to that house. I could go by at any given day, and Jean would be out scraping off the paint and planting in the garden area. They revitalized that house, which I thought was, well, doomed. This is what it looked like when they bought it. So I've heard all kinds of stories about houses being doomed that have been revitalized. It takes somebody young and foolish to buy one and then revitalize it. I don't think you're going to see too many of our Victorians this happen to any longer, because even a Victorian that is, say, in sad shape, most of them are worth about either $500,000 to $1 million each, okay? Because they don't make them anymore, okay? And of course, the price of wood has gone up. Needless to say, Russ and Jean really brought this house back to life. Across the street on Brookside Avenue, I started getting involved in historic preservation in the 70s. And this is my first big failure. You learn a lot when you fail. I was on the Historic and Scenic Preservation Commission. Russ Wilmot was the chairman, I was the vice chairman. And I slept inside this house that was vacant 2 nights in a row, protecting the wall hangings, protecting all of the window shades, and even the door mantles and the fireplace mantles. And the creme de mint of them all was a Thomas Crapper upstairs, capable of flushing 10 pounds of sewage on a single pull. And that disappeared the night that we didn't stay there. And so we tried to get this moved. Redlands didn't have a heritage park to move anything to. And we couldn't get much interest in the 1970s. Who cares about these old houses? And so the freeway had been built in 1962. In fact, we even located them where they would take out more old homes along Colton Avenue and above Pearl Avenue. So they were almost our way of cleaning up Redlands slum areas and stuff. So this house was cut into pieces and moved to Fontana. Now, I want you to understand, you would think with a Victorian house that is this classic, look at the wraparound porch. In the backyard, the Mill Creek Zaha flowed. The house name was Alderbrook. It was built in 1885 by Judge Otis, who was an attorney in San Bernardino. He also was the first guy to start a little area called Terracina. And later on, he sold that whole property to Frank Brown. But the Terracina idea, the name all comes from George Otis. So here is the next, well, sorry. So the next owner is Jenny Davis, who was really an environmentalist. She had Redlands celebrate Arbor Day, planted an oak tree down at Citrus and Cajon and Orange Street that was cut down a few years ago mistakenly. And it's now in the Triangle Park. The Triangle Park is Redlands' first downtown park area. It was donated by Judson and Brown because what are you going to do with something that's, 20 feet by 20 feet by 20 feet and a triangle shape? Start an orange grove, maybe you get 2 trees there. So needless to say, it was a tragedy. Jenny Davis was also responsible for turning the Redlands dump down on New York and Redlands Boulevard into Jenny Davis Park, which is there today. So here is the house. The front view is on top, and the bottom view, if you don't think that people will do inappropriate things, I want to suggest the otherwise is the point. Of course, this is Fontana. And so not to say anything truly negative, this is the steel city, of course, of Kaiser Steel. And of course, this is now in a trailer park. So you can see it today and just look at it and say, oh my God, look what they did. Here's Brookside Avenue in 1903. And of course, Center and Cypress, we're all seeing this house right across from Gerard's. Queen Anne Victorian. And of course, the photograph of it under construction was taken by her friend. He was a landscape photographer, already famous from Los Angeles, hired by the Bear Valley Irrigation Company to photograph the building of the Santa Ana High Line Canal through Santa Ana Canyon. And then he took pictures all over Redlands, anything under construction in 1891. Well, this house was almost finished, and so he took this picture. So here you see the dome of the tower under construction. For a while, Andy Carlson, who was a teacher at Cope Junior High, had his H level train track go out one window, go around the tower, and go in another window, which is cool. So it's appropriately painted colors that would stand out. Because once again, you're building Victorian, I want you to see it. So that lacquer paint that's really shining in the sun, that's on purpose. So across the street, 671 West Cypress, the Dietrich House built in 1901. Once again, now we are building houses like on Olive Avenue. They are the classic boxes, except these people are from Germany and they're used to Victorian features. And so you have the wraparound porch. You have, instead of protruding bay windows, you have square bays, a tower, but it doesn't go above the roof line. And of course, look at all the brackets. Those brackets are holding up nothing, but they're there for looks. Once again, more brackets. And if you want to go and overdose on brackets, just go to Kimberly Crest and you'll see more brackets than you know what to do with. They're the short, stubby ones. Once again, cleaning those with a toothbrush and getting all the paint off usually will do you in very well. So once again, the Dietrich House, when a Holston House, when it was first built in 1901, and then as lawn and everything grows and the trees grow, you can really see it looks quite a bit different today. Across the street, hardly ever notice this house, 640 West Cypress Avenue, the O.W. Harris House, and then of course what it looks like today. Once again, the red and white shingles to give you the contrasts, okay? So the only other thing that I would do is paint the Greek columns here, Corinthian columns, different colors, maybe all the ones around the wraparound one color, and these up here a different color as well. Because once again, I'm trying to say, look at me, I've made it. West Cypress Avenue in 1882. This is Frank Brown's second house in Redlands, first in the subdivision that he built 1 year after the subdivision got started. So if you were looking in the foreground right here, this is Gerard's Market. And here's the house, okay? So it was built for his growing family. And in 1882, he had 3 children, and the family would grow to 7. So here's the house from the front view. And in 1902, it was modified. There it is. Classic box, okay? So if you go in the basement, which a family by the name of Brown was living there, not Frank Brown's relatives. And when I got in the basement, I could see, oh my gosh, all the original studs are there and everything else they built right on the original foundation. And by then, he's using, he's using the Ashford cut stone granite because he knew the bricks weren't good, that they would deteriorate. And so it's on the original foundation, but the house has grown proportionally. So now we're looking at Gerard's Market. This is the stone residence on Gerard's Market. And here we are, West Cypress and San Mateo. Isaac Ford Park is named for him. The first story of this house is adobe. And we missed our mark. If we're really environmentalists, we should be using a lot more adobe. The problem is for plumbing and electrical. Once you've done it, you can't redo it unless you're gonna plow through parts of your walls and stuff. We do have a few adobe homes in Redlands, okay? Anyway, this house is now owned by a church and it's been torn down years ago. East Central, so right behind the high school along Pepper Park, East Central. And at one time, Redlands Boulevard was called Central, and Colton and Ocean to Ocean Highway, and also Water Street. So depending on which period you're looking at, the name will change. This was built in 1902. Heising came from New Jersey, a good Dutch man, a Dutch family. He was taught by his brother to be a carpenter, and he was a really good carpenter. But his real calling in life was landscaping, gardening. So all the oak trees on Buena Vista Street, Garrett Heising. He would not sell you the house until he did the landscaping around it, including the King Tut House or anything else that he did. He would always do the landscaping. And when he was doing arts and crafts house, like the 500 block of Eureka Street, he selected the stones to put in on the foundations of the house and anything that would be in the areas for the plantings and stuff. So this is what it looks like when it was an apartment. It's still an apartment building today. Heising lived upstairs with this family, and 3 apartments were rented out. Here it is as a store, and Garrett and Abraham Heising at the store, once again, right, at one time it was right next to Redlands Junior High, and before that, the Lowell School. And as I said, thanks to Garrett Heising, Pepper Park was planted with pepper trees all along East Central, next to the football stadium that Redlands High School has today, okay? The Junior Historical Society, Redlands High School, replanted the park in the 1990s, and I can tell you that the pepper trees look better than they ever did. They're all grown in height and they're beautiful, and the school district now owns that land and have put in a new sprinkler system which keeps the trees looking really healthy. So Garrett Heising would end up building hundreds of homes in Redlands. So this is built in 1902, and then after he recovered his health, because he was very, very much suffering from tuberculosis, when he finally beat the lung disease, The first thing he did is climb Mount Sangragonio. I have a picture of him standing on the top of Mount Sangragonio, almost like the Statue of Liberty, standing there triumphantly saying, "I beat TB." So, Burgess Sanitarium, 1927, it's on Central Avenue, South Central, way up there, built in 1927. It's the most expensive house listing ever in Redlands. $6.2 million for sale today, if you'd like to buy it. I don't know how's the listing today, but I think if you go up and walk up the driveway, if you're not arrested, they'll ask you if you'd like to buy it. I could buy the front lawn. So here it was before the current listing, and you can see pictures of the interior of the house and of course the exterior as well. For a while, it was a sanitarium. For a while, it was a hospital, and it went through various phases over the years. One of my earliest finds, my wife said, "Look at the pendant on that house. You got to know where that pendant is, Tom." And I said, "I know where that pendant is, Nancy. That is by Gerard's Market, right on Clifton, right on the corner." And sure enough, it's still there. R.R. Miller was an orange grower, built the house in 1891, and here it is today. And one of the things about 1890s houses is, see that sunburst? That's a lucky sign. So the sunburst inside that front entrance gable there, you'll see that on lots of homes in the 1890s. It's a welcome sign, kind of universal welcome sign. Oops. Have to hit the right button. Bernard G. Holmes, 1904, built this house on the corner of Walnut and Center Street. It's right across the street from the Wissahickon Inn. Holmes was in the hotel business, and during the summer, he ran hotels and a place to camp in Big Bear. In fact, he was the first Chamber of Commerce president in Big Bear, wrote short histories of Big Bear that are really fanciful and interesting to read, but not true. In the wintertime, he came down and of course ran this house, and it has 12 bedrooms. And when the Wissahickon overfilled, they rented rooms here. And when they overfilled there as well, the Wissahickon bought the gray gables on the corner of Center and Highland and cut that into additional rooms, okay? So that they had 3 different places that you could stay. So I like to show you this because thing about, you know, if you're a snowbird coming from the East Coast and we tell them about wonderful March or February or January weather, you want to get out there on this porch and sit in a chair and look at the orange groves, smell in March and April all the blossoms on the orange trees, and enjoy Redlands. And then if you want to go downtown, just come right down the stairs and hop on the Redlands streetcar line, which goes right up Center Street. And it'll take you right to Canyon Crest Park, or you can go downtown, or Mr. Holmes also had a limo, and he would take you in his limo with a car and take you downtown so you could go shopping in downtown Redlands. All the conveniences. Here's the Wissahickon. It was built in 1904. And I have to criticize it because it has Sears and Roebuck asbestos siding. It's a curse because this house is shingle style. It should not have asbestos siding. Okay, but I will tell you the asbestos siding, if you don't want to paint ever again, it's the way to go, okay? It also insulates your house, keeps it cooler in the summer and warmer in the winter time. And now you're going to see what it looked like when it was built. Now you see what it looks like. And now we're going to Center Street. This is the Bates House, one of the houses that has an elevator in Redlands. And once again, it's classic box, but it has a wraparound porch. And all kinds of the Greek architecture with the pillars. We just can't have plain wood sticks go up. We've got to have them decorated. And we have Corinthian and Doric and all three styles that come out of Greece. Early picture is faded. Don't blame me, blame the photographer. I did the best I could. Entrance here. Look at the dental course. See, I told you, 1898 to 1903. See the dental course? If you're a dentist, you'd like to get up there and pull a couple. West State and Center Street. So if you go down Center Street north as far as you can go, and it starts to turn and become Texas Street, look up, because you're going to see the William Shea House built in 1890. Shea bought land from the Barton Land and Water Company, and he had the Mill Creek Zaha flowing right in the front of the house. He owned 35 shares of the Mill Creek Zaha, so he had plenty of water. He bought close to 400 acres in the Barton tract and became a major landowner there as well as in Redlands. Of course, I had to wait for them to trim the tree out front to get this photograph, because otherwise the tree covered half the house. But in 1890, it's a house, I'm sure it's been stripped of most of its original barge board. The pendants are gone, everything else, which is typical because, well, you don't, as I said, you don't want to keep painting those. I like the one step here. You step out this doorway, and if you step too far, you're right off the front of the house. They call them mother-in-law porches. I'm sure that's just a coincidence. Okay, once again, Greek revival. Nobody's got anything over us in terms of the Parthenon. This is the John Fisher House. I swear I look at this house and I said I could be in Georgia on a slave plantation. I'd expect to see weeping willows and cotton fields and everything else because it fits right into that period. It's 1895 and the builder was from the South. And so this house faces south. So it's at Center and Crescent Street. I took a picture of it right after it had a fire on the upstairs, figuring it was doomed. It wasn't doomed. They repaired it and put on a new roof and everything else. Once again, look at the dental, or look at the brackets all the way around. 1895, you're 2 years from the building of the Kimberly Crest House, and it has that same kind of features as far as the brackets are concerned. Across the street, Center and Crescent. This house that's there today looks like this. You can barely see the house from all the trees and everything. But once again, A.E. Sterling was a director of the Bear Valley Irrigation Company that had hired the photographer to take pictures of Redlands and the Santa Ana Canyon and the Bear Valley High Line and Merino Valley, every place else that the irrigation company was going to deliver water to. So here's the house as it was being built. Actually, here it is as it's being built. Get the dang guys painting out of the way, just either ladders up and just take a picture. Of course, they've got the orchard planted in front and on the sides of the house. And of course, A.E. Sterling, when you're in Del Rosa and you're on Sterling Avenue, it's named for this Sterling because he brought water in the North Fork ditch of Highland to Sterling Avenue and irrigated that area. And then eventually he put an extension on the ditch and watered all the way down to Waterman Avenue in San Bernardino, all water from the Big Bear. So Crescent, Rollin B. Lane was also a director of the Bear Valley Irrigation Company. This is at Center and Crescent. Okay, Center and Crescent. So Crescent is the cross street. You're on Center looking straight up. And the unfortunate thing here is called a lot split. That's when the city council lets you take your property, divide it up, and now there's a 1960s house plopped right here. So you don't see this house like it would, that you normally would see it as you're going up crescent. You wouldn't even think, looking from the distance of that house today, is the 1890s staring at you. Here is the front of the house, which on the property faces up the hill and not down the hill. And this is the front of the house, actually the back of the house, okay? And you can see the walkway coming up to it. It's got ashlar cut stone. That cut stone came from the 6 masons that built the Bear Valley Dam in 1883, 1884. Half of them live in Mentone, the other half lived here in Redlands, and they were kept busy building. The only problem is that they had to go out to the Santa Ana Wash and Mill Creek Wash and grab every granite stone they could and haul them over to Redlands, and they split them here. And it's quite a feat without electricity to split granite into square blocks. So Russ Keller, who does that here in Redlands today, took 3 or 4 tons of stone to make the plaque pedestal that's at the corner of Cypress and Center Street in front of Gerard's, that is commemorating the Judson and Brown deodar firs that are there. And we also hired him to do the work on our plaque for the Mill Creek Zaha dedication in 2019. And so once again, he goes through a lot of stone to cut it into squares to place it, to make it look that ashlar cut. Chrisman House was on 58 East Cypress Avenue. It's now apartment buildings. Across the street, 221 East Cypress is still there. Bernard Jacobs built the house in 1895. The tower looks much the same today. Here's what it looked like when it was first built. Once again, you're not far from Albertsons. So as you come out on Cypress Avenue, you're on East Cypress, you're looking across, you'll see this house. It used to be surrounded by orange groves. The orange groves are all gone. 330 Cypress, once again, we're looking at a period of the Craftsman period, and protruding rafters, shingle style with 3 or 4 different types of shingles on the outside to give you that visual perspective. And they tried to paint these earthen colors because you're going to plant trees and things around it, and it's supposed to blend in with the environment, okay? So you sort of got that feeling here. Although I don't think blue is an earthen color. Here's 330 when it was first built. You can see dark brown and of course the white shingle. Once again, 330 today. Going down the street, 577 West Cypress, built in 1883, it's gone. It was built by Samuel Hayes. He had to order his wood from Arizona. It came in by Santa Fe train, delivered to Colton, and they hauled it out here. He was, his background was, he owned livery stables, but he really was in the hotel business. He helped construct the Windsor Hotel. He also had a hand in managing for a while the Terracina Hotel. The house is really, really unique. It's torn down in 1939. Of course, at that time, painted white. It lost a lot of its visual. Today, there's 2 1950 homes on the same parcel. So once again, looking at it, you can see the rusticated Cewins on the corner here. They're supposed to look like stone. And of course, the pendants up there, up on the top, and then of course the brackets. And a modified bay, it's not rounded, it's angular. That's a cheaper way to build because you know what it takes to bend wood? You've got to put it in water for a long time and slowly but surely put the bends to it. So it finally holds that shape. After it's warped that shape, then you pound it in. If you pound it in before the warping is done, it will split and they won't be there very long. So Cypress and Cajon were on the playground for Kingsbury Elementary School. 1881, this is one of the first 12 houses built in Redlands. And of course, we're right on the corner, as I said, Cajon and Cypress. So Mr. Sims, when he built this house, wraparound porch going all the way around. Once again, the rusticated hewings on the corner pieces here. I like the diamonds that he's put in the shingles, and of course a widow's walk. Wow, if you wanted to be a widow, you could easily push your wife off there, or your husband, and be a widow pretty easy. I'm working on this one because I think it's still alive and well in Redlands. Yes, I think it's on Chestnut, but I'm not going to give you a location because I'm not done yet. I haven't found it. There's still a lot of things I have to work on. All I have to do is live forever and I can make it. So same corner from Kingsbury Grammar School in 1888, from the tower, looking down on the corner of Cajon and Cypress. Okay, Cajon and Cypress. See the signs right there. Cypress and San Mateo, the Will Fowler, he was a mayor of Redlands for a while. And now we're looking at about Smiley Elementary School. Here it is in the Orange Grove. And then also on West Cypress was Henry Lawton's villa. Henry Lawton was a Congressional Medal of Honor winner in the Civil War. And then in 1886, he did a little feat. He captured Geronimo in Arizona. And then he came to Redlands and he built this house. And he was recruiting for people for the Spanish-American War, got in his carriage every day, went down Cypress Avenue, and saw Mary Fackler, a first grade teacher at Kingsbury, having her first graders out with their hands over their hearts doing the Pledge of Allegiance, written by a socialist in 1898 to commemorate the 400th anniversary of Columbus's sailing the ocean blue. And he thought that was great. And he asked her for a copy of the poem. And then he told the governor of California, who eventually Congress found out, you know, they're a little late. And so by, I think it's the 1950s, finally Congress says there should be a patriotic event occurring in every public schools across the United States, and let it be the Pledge of Allegiance. So the only thing added once again in the 1950s, so we wouldn't look like our communist detractors in Russia, we added under God. That was not in the original poem that was written at the time. So anyway, General Lawton's house, after he died, leaving his wife, the widow, had to make a living. She added on to the west side of the house extensively, and this became the Lawton Villa. And it was once again a place for people who were escaping the cold of the winter and came out to Redlands, and you would stay here from October until usually the first week in May, and then you got the heck out of town because it started getting hot. But this one of the Hillcrest Inn, the Wissahickon, we had lots of places built and used in 1904 as a place to escape the heat. Once again, General Lawton's house. We named Lawton Street in Livonia after him, and other historic names like Clay, Webster, Washington, Calhoun, Columbia. That's our historic, you might say, our patriotic names that are all up there in the Livonia area. 1200 West Cypress Avenue. I'm trying to find out when that was built. I haven't discovered it yet. I found all kinds of clues, but I don't have the final thing. West Cypress and Terracina, once again, Greek Revival. And you can see when it was first built, it had red shingles, and the front portico, this area here, was all painted white, because after all, it's supposed to look like marble. And here's a picture of it. And you're at the entrance of Smiley Park, the west end of Smiley Park. The little gazebo there, that's a Spooner, was there to give you information on the park. So now, guess what? I have finished part 1. And I'm not going to show you part 2, because that will be a program coming up in the future. So if there are any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. Yes, go ahead.
On the very first house that you showed, there were two entrances.
Yes.
Can you repeat the question?
On the very first house I showed, the Hosking house, there were two entrances. And that's because the Victorian attitude was, you're coming to my house, I want you to circle around and see all of the aspects and the architecture of my house. And either door will get you into the front entrance. Some of them had a vestibule, like the Morey House has a vestibule. That's to catch the flies and the odors. And when you take off your coat and you're dripping with snow, your coat is going to hang there and it's going to drip there. You're not going to get the interior walnut, with water stains and things like that. But many of these first homes had two entrances. In fact, homes on Cajon Street usually had two entrances because they were owned by doctors. And you didn't go to the doctor's office. You went to the doctor's office because the doctor didn't come to you. So, and the doctor's office had a door that said office, and that's how you went in for him to see you by appointment. And of course, it was convenient on Cajon Street because the trolley came up and down Cajon Street, so you could get on the trolley, and the trolley motorman would stop if you hailed them anywhere along the route, so they could get off and go to your doctor's appointment. And yes. Yes, it is in Fontana, and was taken apart in pieces and moved to a trailer park in Fontana. And actually, as I said, it's the George Otis house. We called it Jenny Davis because she was really the last famous person to live there. The question was, where is the Jenny Davis house? And I said, Fontana. Yes.
The painting of your house that you showed, do you know who the artist was?
Yes, she's still alive and well, and she lives in Angeles Oaks. Ginger Pena. Ginger Pena paints houses, and oh my gosh, it was a bargain. I think she charged us $250. Of course, I know her. Okay, when I was the manager of campgrounds, I felt guilty hiring her to paint the numbers on the camps, the camping sites in Barton Flats, San Antonio, and the sign Barton Flats Campground. I mean, that's like hiring Da Vinci to hand wash things, with his hands and stuff. So anyway, she's an excellent artist. So I'm sure if you were looking to have, I didn't have my 31 Ford there. I took a picture of it and then she painted it there. I also have Craft and Dairy Divco in the front yard too. And she painted that with the Craft and Dairy Divco. So what the heck, if Photoshop can do it, why can't I? Okay, so. Sure.
The second picture that you showed of Frank Brown's house.
Yes.
On Cypress, that's adjacent to the Gerard's parking lot. In your picture, it shows these giant Washingtonian palms. There were 6 of them, and a subsequent owner after Mr. Brown cut those down one piece at a time with this chop, chop, chop. And I went across the street and said to him, did you ever think about selling these and relocating them? Oh, no, we couldn't be bothered. So those trees are completely gone.
Many of the Mexican fan palms that are now around the Loma Linda Hospital are all from Redlands. And finally, when Redlands got a clue that that was taking place, because the contractors were selling them for $1,500 a piece. And so they were all they all put on flatbed trucks and taken down and planted around the hospital. And I mean, they are sturdy. I mean, they can take a couple of months where they're on the back of the truck before they're planted and put in. The hole doesn't have to be that deep. And within 6 months, they're rooted strong enough that they can take a Santa Ana wind and they don't blow over. So we lost a lot of palm trees that way. In fact, the Mexican fan palms that are now on Dearborn were originally on East Citrus Avenue and moved to Dearborn because Redlands got smart and said, okay, to the developer, okay, we're gonna give the permits for this property, we're gonna have to move the Mexican fan palms to Dearborn and plant them, and we even give them the number of feet they had to be apart. They used to be really close together. So, yes, way in the back. Oh, no, go ahead. Colton, Slover Mountain. Yes, except if you're building the Big Bear Dam, they didn't trust it. It had never been, Frank Brown had never seen a test on Slover Mountain cement. So he bought his cement from jolly old England, and it came around the Horn, unloaded in Long Beach, and then brought up by wagons, went up Cajon Pass to Bear Valley Road, unloaded at the Santa Fe station at Bear Valley, which is today called Hesperia, and then unloaded there and came up Cushionberry to the dam. The cement was $3 a barrel, but delivered it cost $9. But it came over as ballast on ships. So it was really cheap to cross the ocean because it was just basically weight to keep the ship down in the water. So yeah, after when they built the new dam in 1911, they trusted Colton cement had been tested by then to be sturdy and reliable. But in 1883, it had never been tested. So Frank Brown thought, not going to use it. And incidentally, that cement that was used on the first dam in 1883-84 is red. It's a red color. And as it aged, it turned brown. Okay. But some of the early homes have some of that cement that came all the way from Colton. But otherwise, from the 1887 on, after the railroad was completed in Redlands by February of 1888, we have regular service to Redlands from Santa Fe. And so lumber yards went up and down Orange Street, and the Andrews brothers sold you lumber fairly cheaply. And so you could build a home in Redlands, a pretty nice home for about $2,000, okay? Judson and Brown had a codicil on all the land they sold. And you had 6 months to build at least a $1,500 structure on the home, or the property reverted back to Judson and Brown. And the reason for that is cut out speculation, okay? Because speculation was bad news. And during the boom period, 1887, 1888, they didn't want to have a paper town with people saying I bought this and then turned around and sold this and sold that. They wanted to actually have a town. In fact, they did the same thing for churches. The Methodist Church, First Methodist Church in Redlands is on the corner of 4th and West Citrus, okay? And they hadn't built a church in 2 years. And the deed said they had to build a substantial $1,500 structure within 6 months. They didn't do it. There were only 15 or 20 Methodists at the time. They kept trying to gain money, and Judson Brown gave them, extensions until finally they built their church. But they could have, as they did with some property owners, take the property back because they hadn't invested what they said they were going to do. So those Christians, you got to watch out for them. Yes. Yes. Theodore Clark. So Theodore Clark was also a secretary for the Bear Valley Irrigation Company and helped develop Moreno Valley. So in Moreno Valley, if you're on the 60 heading east, from the 215 going east, all the streets are in alphabetical order, okay? And they're all names of Redlands people who were part of the development of Moreno Valley. The last name, because they didn't have a T, they called it Theodore Street because they didn't want to use Clark because they already had the C already taken care of. So Day and Hancock and all the other streets. The first street, the second street in that was where the 215 is, and that was called Brown Street for Frank Brown. And then there was Brownstown or Brownville. That was a substation on the Santa Fe Railroad where they unloaded all the supplies to come in to build Moreno Valley. So alphabetical, all you have to do is drive in Moreno Valley. It's like driving in Little Redlands. If you really want to see Little Redlands, you got to go to Lakeview. And Lakeview, the main street is Cajon Street. And then Frank Brown built his house on Cypress Avenue. There's Palm and there's Fern. All the streets are there. In fact, Frank Brown's 1893 house is still standing, although it's vacant, and I don't give it much of a chance of surviving. So he bought 8,000 acres there in about 1893, 94, and then subdivided that land for his children to develop. Yes. Okay, the question is, there are streets in Redlands named after states. How did they come up with the naming of the streets that are named after states? So the first street that had a state name was Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania will not take you to Pennsylvania, okay? But the other streets that are in the Barton Land and Barton Land Development of 1887, when they subdivided, the Barton family took it easy and they went Alabama and Texas, Ohio, Nevada. All those streets were all names that they came up with just state. Most places usually put them in alphabetical order of their statehood. Barton didn't do that. He was a Southerner and didn't want to have to fool around with that. By then he was getting up in age and he just made $300,000. Are you worried about naming of streets? This $300,000 was a lot of money back then.
Okay, well, thanks, Tom, for another wonderful program. Let's give for the I just came up with an idea for another program after part 2. We're going to have Stump Tom Atchley night and submit questions and see if he can answer or show him pictures and have him identify houses. Next month, our meeting will be on Monday, April 25th. The speakers will be Dr. Marcus Paulson and George Willoughby. Marcus used to be a board member and is an avid Redlands collector. This time, they're going to be presenting Below Redlands, Hidden Treasures in the Ground. So I hope to see all of you next month. Thanks.